So, I'd like to do the final of this 5-part series of, and really what I'd like to do is to try to see if we can be massive to do, but to see if we could summarize in a short period of time, motivational interviewing. Now, we're aware that it's about 11,000 clinical studies, or 11,000 citations and about 1,100 clinical studies, and it works on 27 different problem areas. I mean, it just has this massive, so you and I sitting here for 10 minutes and trying to summarize what motivational interviewing is pretty ridiculous, but
Yes.
we can try.
We could.
We could try.
Yeah.
And, what I picked up from our conversation, was that first and foremost that, is a fundamental process. Deep in this is this idea of listening deeply and almost listening to people beyond what they're telling us. As almost like a fundamental way of being with people, is what you said, a way of being, or a way of walking alongside, a way of guiding them. And then we moved from that to this, to the spirit. It's almost like it's not, we've separated spirituality from the work of healthcare and so on and so forth. But really, there's a certain spirit here that that comes with the worker, that comes with the helper, that they sit with people. And when they sit with people to be of help, there's almost a spiritual, to be of service. And that's really those domains that we were talking about, the dimensions, which is the partnership, the collaboration, the radical acceptance, the compassion, the empowerment. That these are dimensions that we can actually see in the conversations. If we were watching people have a conversation with another human being, we would see those things. We'd feel those things. And the other things of reflexes, of fixing, or cognition, or lots of questions of curiosity, are not in the spirit. They're not there. And that's what we were kind of thinking about. Like, how do you have that as a foundation? And then you have to have some skills. And we've talked a little bit about skills this time. The open-ended question, the affirmation, the empathetic understanding, the summary, just the skills. So, is there other things?
I think I would offer that it does take practice, and that if this resonates with you, as it did with me, I want to know how to do it yesterday.
Right.
And being able to give yourself grace as you're dipping your toe in, as you're exploring it, as you're experiencing it. And to, we talk about compassion as part of the spirit, and I think you also need to apply that to yourself as you're learning MI and as you're practicing MI. And recognizing that you may say things that don't land quite right, and being able to apologize for that and be human for that. And know that, again, if you've put in and built this trusting relationship through the spirit and this way of being, it won't damage the relationship. It'll actually strengthen it.
So you're reflecting to people that, be aware of your own self-critic.
Yes.
That, this is like playing the piano or learning a skill, that at first you're going to go through an awkward phase. That's not going to feel right.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel like your usual self. It's not going to feel as easy. And you're sort of suggesting that as they move through, a bit of understanding the spirit of MI, the skills of MI, And then moving on to change talk, and and listening for the change, listening for the whispers of hopes and dreams. You're just saying to people, as you walk alongside that process, then the goal here is to be gentle to yourself, because otherwise you're going to get frozen in the expert. You're going to get frozen in that, like, I know you don't know.
Right, right.
And you're going to take over because, that's the dominant process of all healthcare, which is to take over in the face of chronic illness. Is to meet somebody with diabetes, or to meet somebody with obesity, or meet somebody that is doing commercial tobacco use, or whatever it might be, and they get told what to do because the expert is sitting there and not using motivational interviewing, which is, tell me about commercial tobacco use. Tell me about using chemicals, your addiction, or whatever. I wouldn't use the word addiction, but substance use and misuse. So we get these dimensions, which are, again, the spirit, the skills, the recognizing change talk, if you will. And another one we talked about was, the ask, offer, ask, which is a skill that in the face of change talk, or in the latter part of the conversation, that you begin to offer people ideas, but you have to do it with permission. And then you have to ask them what they think about those ideas. So that's sort of where we come to. Is there more you would bring to a motivational interviewing, other than be aware of your own practice?
Well, I think appreciating that when people are ambivalent, that there's a part of them moving towards change. And that, if you're having a conversation and you're feeling that discord come in, that if there's ambivalence, there's change talk nestled in there. And so how do you utilize MI to be able to pinpoint that? And I think going back to what you said, the duality, and that maybe a double-sided reflection, and being able to pull out and tease out, where that duality is and where that ambivalence is, and offering it back, because people may not even realize where their struggles are. They may not be able to see that, and I think that's where MI offers you this soft way of having a conversation to help people.
I love that soft way. What you're really talking about is that people are ambivalent.
Yes.
And that's normal. And that, that there's this duality between where they are and what they dream about, or, their present behavior and their hopes, their goals, whatever the language is that you want to use, and that this is a conflict. And to, a lot of the business is about confronting people, but to carefully affront people, I call it carefrontation, but it's carefully confronting people with their own duality, with their two sides, with their present behavior of how wonderful this is to be doing what it is, or in your story with the child and the mother, that her automatic reaction is to care for her child, not to have the trauma of her own life in poverty, and not have enough food and feel hungry a lot. So with that food insecurity, they call it, right? That she didn't want that.
Right.
Now she has a 10 or 11-year-old boy who is 215 pounds and being bullied. And that was all a reaction. And there's a duality there. And how do you honor that duality, the two sides? Like, I don't want him to ever feel that feeling.
Right.
And I don't want him to be bullied at school. I don't want him to have to feel like he's always hungry also. because hunger becomes love for him.
Yeah.
And now we're back to those words you use, food is love. But one of the things that's beautiful about MI that you're talking about is that this duality is normal.
Yeah.
And how do we, this is a longer conversation, so maybe we should have done a sixth one of these, but how do we take a healthcare system that is so focused on repair of the brokenness, the acute medicine, which is valuable
Yes.
to repair things.
Right.
But there's a group of people that are not in brokenness. They are actually chronic. They're
Yes.
struggling with this ambivalence.
Yeah.
That on one hand they have diabetes, and they have all the information in the world on what they ought to eat, and they don't want to because in their vision of the world it would be abandoning their lives, abandoning their history, they're abandoning what they know. And so they have this duality, and that's chronic.
Yeah.
How do we create a medicine for chronic illness?
Well, and I think that that's where empathy really comes into play. I think appreciating the knowledge that people have around their condition, around the choices that they make. Because again, if we're working with, as a food coach, if you're working with someone that does have diabetes or high cholesterol, something that they've had these conversations likely many times, and they probably can tell you all of what the evidence-based recommendations are.
Right.
But there's something there that's hard for them to kind of break that through. And especially in having the conversations about food, because there's usually more things tied to it,
Right.
will open up
Right.
a lot more around what's important to them, what their values are, like the little girl that wanted to sing a solo.
Right.
There's a bigger picture there. And so by building that trust and giving that space, it's going to open up that conversation.
And I love that you're going back to, the most pronounced and probably the most difficult skill set in motivational interviewing is empathetic understanding, or complex reflections, or gentle guesses, however you want to look at this. And that you can tell whether people are skillful at that or they're skillful at something else. And that what happens with people that are sort of repairing, they're often assessing, like what's wrong here? Let me get what's wrong. Let's get wrong because that's all my focus. And when in the face of chronic illness, in the face of chronic chronicity, I call it, in the language of chronicity, it's more about empathy.
Yeah.
And how do we make this shift? You're working in this healthcare system, and it still sees everything as acute.
Yeah, and I think the other part is, checking our agenda. And so, as a food coach, you've got ideas in your head that you are probably pretty confident you've got this information that will help. But being mindful that we are really listening to what their agenda is, what is it that they want, and understanding and appreciating and accepting that they very well could make a decision that we wouldn't want them to make because we have all this knowledge and this information. I think that with regards to the healthcare system, where food coaches can come in, there may be an element of prevention because yes, they maybe have this chronic disease, they might be chronically ill, but we are coming in and perhaps able to slow down some progression. Any change is likely going to have a positive impact, and even if it's small. And I think a lot of times, again, in healthcare and medicine, nutrition, it's a list of things that you have to go home and do.
Well, I love this phrase, I thank you for the think small, aim low, go slow.
Yeah.
And you can feel the progression of coming alongside people and the progression of them coming to their hopes and dreams. If we were to try to summarize all of this, do you have any thoughts about how would you summarize these 5 different components of motivational interviewing as you've thought about them?
I think that there's that spirit, which is really kind of the roots of the practice, and kind of bringing that in. Applying the spirit not only into the conversations that you're having with others, but for yourself. And it doesn't have to be just around learning motivational interviewing. It could be for yourself as well. And then how do you see your MI path? And with regards to practice, with regards to, bringing it into play for your work, what resonates with you, and where do you see yourself going? And again, there's no right or wrong. How do you get support with your practice? And really focusing on that acceptance that the people you're having the conversation with are going to make the decisions that they feel are best for them at that moment in time.
Well, I'd love to see if I can try to summarize this also. First, I want to say thank you. It's just it's just an excuse to hang out with you. And I don't, where all of this goes, I have no idea, but I always love an excuse to hang out with you.
No, I feel the same.
I get touched by your brilliance and your thoughtfulness. And what I guess what I'm left with is that, motivational interviewing is something that everybody is doing. Everybody wants to listen to people that are suffering and struggling. Everybody. Everybody believes that they're, and have the capacity to be very kind, and believe that they're empathetic, even though the research shows that we're losing empathy in the healthcare field. That we're losing the empathy in the streets, that we're losing empathy in our schools, and that over the last 20 years it's decreased. Whenever they've taken empathetic exams of pockets of people, they've noticed that it's just decreasing and decreasing. So the question becomes, what motivational interviewing has is this spirit, this idea of compassion, and not as some out of the way thing, but a way to be with people suffering and to accept that they are, and that everybody is, and that everybody's got a duality. Everybody wants the best for themselves and for the people they love and they care about. They want power and control over their lives. They yearn for purpose, to belong and to be a part of something, and they want to be in small packs, small tribes, small groups of community people, where the neighbors are going to take care of neighbors and individuals are going to take care of individuals. And the Surgeon General's work on the epidemic of loneliness, that MI is about connection. Spirit and skillfulness, listening for people's dreams. being able to kind of highlight when they do talk about their dreams. It's just below the surface, as you said earlier. They have the wisdom. And finally, to affirm that that people, are doing the best that they can with the resources they have, and that they are always in a struggle between parts of them that want to stay the same and the parts of them that dream and hope and wish for, and that they're in a duality, and that that's normal, and that we in healthcare could walk alongside them with the spirit and the skills and the recognition of change talk and understanding the ambivalence. And I really can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
That was a brilliant summary. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.